There was a silence buried deep inside the royal chaos. A silence so strange, so deliberate that people ignored it for years without realizing it was the biggest clue of all. Harry and Meghan exploded the monarchy from the inside. They dragged family secrets onto global television. They shattered royal traditions, humiliated palace aides, accused unnamed royals of cruelty, racism, manipulation, betrayal. They burned bridges so publicly that Buckingham Palace looked like it was permanently on fire. And yet somehow, the one royal figure they barely touched was the most disgraced man in the entire institution, Prince Andrew.
The Yorks have always been protected by Harry and Meghan, but I think the gloves are about to come.
That silence was never normal. People tried pretending it was coincidence. It wasn't. Harry had endless fury for Charles. Meghan had endless bitterness for the palace machine. William became the villain of Spare. Catherine was dragged into cold little stories designed to wound her image. Even palace staff were described with venom. But Andrew, practically untouched. One weak paragraph, one passing mention, nothing more. And the deeper you stare at that silence, the more disturbing it becomes, because silence inside royal warfare is never empty. Silence is strategy. Silence is protection. Silence is fear. And now suddenly, after years of nobody daring to pull this thread, the entire thing may be collapsing because the one woman who knows where everybody is buried is reportedly preparing to speak. Sarah Ferguson. Fergie, the woman everyone mocked for decades, may now become the single most dangerous figure Harry and Meghan have ever faced. And that alone should terrify people, because Fergie is not a palace robot trained to protect the crown. She never fully belonged. She was tolerated when useful, discarded when embarrassing, frozen out whenever scandal touched her name. She survived humiliation after humiliation while the institution quietly stepped back and let her take the damage alone. That changes people, especially someone emotional, impulsive, wounded, and financially cornered. She watched Diana implode. She watched Andrew collapse. She watched Meghan enter the family like a hurricane. And unlike the carefully rehearsed courtiers who hide behind anonymous briefings, Fergie remembers details emotionally. She remembers conversations, facial expressions, tension in rooms, private bitterness whispered over dinners, the kind of things that don't disappear. What makes this situation explosive is timing. Fergie reportedly lost almost everything that once kept her loyal. Royal Lodge slipping away, financial pressure mounting again, Andrew politically dead inside royal life, William allegedly drawing hard lines around the York family, invitations disappearing, public distance growing colder by the month, the daughters isolated, the institution no longer pretending rehabilitation is possible. And when somebody realizes they sacrificed years protecting a machine that has already abandoned them, something dangerous happens psychologically. Silence stops feeling noble. Silence starts feeling expensive. That is why publishing houses are circling her now like sharks, because everybody understands the same thing. Fergie knows things no journalist can verify independently. She witnessed Harry and Meghan privately during the years when palace tensions were exploding behind closed doors. She saw how they behaved when cameras disappeared. She saw who they trusted. And most importantly, she saw the strange closeness between the Sussexes and the Yorks. This is the detail many people overlooked for years. Harry and Meghan reportedly gravitated toward the York family because both sides felt pushed outside the royal core. Shared resentment became glue. Shared bitterness became bonding. And inside those relationships, walls come down. People speak more freely. Complaints become confessions. Frustrations become strategy sessions. That means Fergie was not hearing rumors filtered through hostile palace aides. She was hearing things directly, watching dynamics firsthand, forming opinions based on proximity instead of gossip. That matters enormously because if she speaks now, her words carry a completely different kind of credibility. But even that is not the most explosive part of this entire mystery. The real question sitting underneath everything is still the same terrifying one. Why did Harry and Meghan protect Andrew? Why maintain that silence while attacking almost everybody else? Because when you examine the pattern carefully, it stops looking accidental and starts looking negotiated. Not formally, not openly, but mutually understood. You stay away from our vulnerabilities, we stay away from yours. And suddenly, the silence becomes less mysterious and far more strategic. Then come the details that make people deeply uncomfortable. Statements from Virginia Giuffre's lawyer suggesting Meghan potentially had relevant knowledge connected to Andrew's world. Old photographs showing Meghan socializing within elite circles connected to people later linked publicly to scandals. scandal? Yacht culture, wealthy social networks, private parties, exclusive circles where powerful people overlapped constantly. None of this proves criminal wrongdoing. That distinction matters, but it creates context, and context changes how silence is interpreted, because suddenly the possibility emerges that everybody involved understood too much about everybody else. Andrew understood things about Meghan's social orbit. Meghan potentially understood things about Andrew's network. Harry understood family secrets nobody outside palace walls could fully grasp. And when powerful people hold mutually dangerous information, war becomes complicated. Nobody fires the fatal shot first unless they're certain the other side cannot retaliate. For years, that balance held. Until now, Harry's silence may actually be the most revealing silence of all. He grew up around Andrew. He witnessed decades of whispers. He watched scandals emerge publicly while living inside the family itself. And still, when Spare arrived, a memoir willing to humiliate his own father and brother publicly, Andrew barely appeared. That contrast is shocking once you notice it. Harry weaponized deeply personal stories against William and Charles, but the biggest scandal in modern royal history received almost nothing. That omission screams louder than any accusation ever could. The most dangerous thing about this entire royal situation is not what has already been exposed. It is what powerful people were desperate to keep hidden. And Sarah Ferguson may now be standing directly on top of that buried truth with absolutely nothing left to lose. That is what changes everything, because until now, every silence inside this story served a purpose. Harry and Meghan stayed quiet about Andrew. The Yorks stayed quiet about the Sussexes. The palace stayed careful about everybody. But once money disappears, status disappears, invitations disappear, protection disappears, silence becomes worthless. And worthless silence eventually turns into revenge. What makes Fergie uniquely dangerous is that she is not speaking as a palace loyalist. She is speaking as someone who feels discarded. That emotional difference matters more than people realize. A loyal insider edits themselves carefully. A wounded outsider doesn't. And right now, Fergie reportedly sits in the exact psychological position that creates explosive memoirs. Hurt, humiliated, financially pressured, isolated from the institution she defended for decades, watching her daughters pushed further away from royal life while William quietly redraws the boundaries of who belongs and who doesn't. And let's be honest about William for a second, because his role in this story is massive. He appears completely different from the late Queen in how he handles scandal. Elizabeth absorbed chaos quietly. William appears determined to cut it out entirely, coldly, directly, publicly if necessary. The exclusion of the Yorks from key royal events reportedly was not emotional drama. It was institutional strategy, a message, a line in the sand. The monarchy William wants to inherit cannot survive endless scandal shadows hanging over it. So he's creating distance from every unstable branch at once. Harry in California, Andrew in disgrace, the York daughters under scrutiny. Same standard for everybody. And while that consistency may strengthen the institution publicly, it creates a terrifying side effect privately. People who realize they will never be welcomed back stop protecting the institution that abandoned them. That is where the real fear begins for Harry and Meghan. Because what happens if Fergie decides protecting them no longer benefits her? What happens if she confirms the private complaints palace staff allegedly made for years? What happens if she describes how Meghan behaved behind closed doors? What happens if she reveals the extent of the Sussex-York alliance during the height of royal civil war? Suddenly, the entire narrative changes, not because newspapers said it, not because anonymous palace sources whispered it, but because somebody from inside the room finally said it openly. And that is the trap Harry and Meghan may have accidentally built themselves. For years, they survived criticism by claiming the establishment was targeting them. Palace briefing, racist press, smear campaigns, jealous courtiers. But Fergie does not fit that villain role. She cannot easily be dismissed as a palace puppet, because the palace spent decades embarrassing her too. She has suffered publicly. She has been mocked publicly. She has been excluded publicly, which means if she speaks, people listen differently. The most uncomfortable part of all this may actually be the hypocrisy issue. Harry and Meghan branded themselves as fearless truth-tellers willing to challenge powerful people. Yet the one scandal they approached with almost surgical caution was Andrew. That contradiction becomes impossible to ignore once you notice it. They were willing to emotionally destroy family relationships publicly. They were willing to damage the monarchy globally globally. But when it came to Andrew, silence. That silence alone raises questions nobody has properly answered. And now, imagine what happens if Netflix revisits the Andrew scandal in future royal dramatizations. Imagine public interest exploding again. Imagine younger audiences discovering overlapping elite social circles, yacht culture, celebrity connections, old photographs, mutual acquaintances, legal allegations, buried relationships, and years of carefully managed silence all at once. Suddenly, the narrative slips beyond palace control completely. That is the deeper anxiety consuming everybody involved. They are losing control of the story itself. Because in the end, this isn't just about one memoir anymore. It's about whether the hidden agreements inside royal life are finally collapsing. The quiet arrangements, the unspoken protections, the I won't expose you if you don't expose me dynamic that may have held this entire fragile structure together for years. And if Fergie breaks that silence, she doesn't just damage Harry and Meghan. She changes how the public understands the entire Sussex era forever.